I'm Randy, this is Zach with MotoTrax. We're going to show you how to set up your new MotoTrax kit. So the first step is going to be to get your kit out of the box and get it on a counter or bench or something like that so you can work on it. All right, now that your kit is out of the box, we're going to show you how to set it up and get it ready to be installed on the bike.
You can grab some of these boxes, set them up here on the counter. All right, and that's all that's in the ski box. So then we'll be grabbing the rest of these components from here to get them onto the kit.
Okay, so now we're going to set up the front of the track kit before we actually mount it to the bike. So the first step is going to be to take your A and B components, which are the front swing arm mounts. Get them out of the bag, and then you're also going to need the chain adjusters. Okay, and so the way these work is the mounts actually slide in on the frame, and then the chain adjuster slides in here. And this is what's going to be used later to adjust your chain and actually mount it to the bike. And so on the other side, you have your chain guide one, and then also another one of these. And then next, you're going to get your bolts loosely threaded in there. So those are going to be bolts G. G are the longer bolts, and they actually come into the back mount through the spacer and into the inside. Okay, and then you're going to want to take bolt or nuts I and loosely thread them on the back of these adjusters. Just a couple threads so that they won't fall off. All right, so to hook up the lower shock, the easiest way is once you get your front mounts on, set it on a stand, and then have someone help you by grabbing the rear grab bar, and it'll make it a lot easier. So Zach will lift on the rear grab bar here, and then it gets it roughly in place, down a little bit, down, 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 and then just like that, you can thread it in, and then thread it in the other side. For those bolts, make sure you blue Loctite them, and you're also gonna wanna torque them down to 60 Newton meters.
So real quick, I'm going to show you how to get your strut set up. So of course you're going to grab out your shock strut, which is DF. And then you're going to need your eye bolt here, which is E. And then you're going to get the nut threaded down to where you have about 3 threads left, maybe 1/4 inch. Probably get that threaded in there in the bottom, just get it spun on. So once you kind of get that there lined up, kind of get them set up and even, kind of looking like that. And then you're going to want to get your strut spacer here, letter FF. Go ahead, slide that in the top there. So smaller ones, gonna go up top here. Get that in there, thread it in. All right, kind of leave that set up. Get them tightened down. Then grab the bar here. It's bar D. There we go. And then use the larger of the set screws that was in that bag and get that started to thread in there. Right. I like to leave it a little bit loose so you have some movement side to side for when you need to get the kit lined up later. Get it lined up, get it spaced in there. Get your upper shock bolt, the stock one from the bike. Alright, get it in there, get it lined up, get a couple threads on so you still have some movement. Then just set that down. We'll be getting that installed later.
So the next step before we put the kit on the actual bike is we need to put the front spacers on, front swing arm spacers. They slide through these fronts just like this. They should go pretty easy. Now, depending on the bike, you may have a different size left and right, and to figure out which one goes where, you can just dry fit them up in your engine spacing. That'll tell you which side they go on, because they should fit pretty snug. And then you also want to put blue Loctite on these set screws here and loosely thread them in. We'll fully tighten them at a later step, but it's easier to get them in place right now. And then for your spacers, just get them roughly centered. That way they're easier to line up when you get on there. So for the next step, we're gonna actually mount the track kit into the back where your swing arm used to be. It's a lot easier if you get it visually lined up the best as possible and get a person on either side. And then you insert your swing arm axle just like that. Once you get that in, take your strut from before and slide it back in line with this next slot. So this is the step where you're going to install the bolts for your strut, and it's easier if you can have someone lift up on the back of the kit, and then up a little more, right there, down a little bit. Okay, yeah, and you just get them threaded loosely on both sides. And then at this stage, the kit is mostly attached, and then we'll do some adjustment and fine tuning to get it fully set up. So for the next step, we're gonna line up the inner sprocket with the sprocket on the bike. And to do this, you wanna, first of all, snug down both of these chain adjustment bolts on both sides, so the 4 large M12 bolts. And then you'll notice a little offset from one side to the other if you look down the sprocket and to the chain guide. So your hub sprocket, your chain guide, and the counter sprocket on the motorcycle should be perfectly aligned before you put the chain on. And in order to get it aligned, all you have to do with all your set screws and everything loose is just tap the side of the kit with a rubber mallet on the bolt, and it'll slowly inch over until you get it perfectly lined up. So now that you got the sprockets and chain aligned on the primary chain, then what you're going to want to do is tighten the inner set screws on these collars that you threaded in earlier with the blue Loctite and fully snug them up. And then also there's a set screw on the bottom of this strut at the base of it. You also want to have Loctite on that one and fully snug it up. And then that will make your kit fully rigid with the bike. Alright, now that you got your kit mounted and everything's lined up, you actually want to install the chain. So you just thread it through. And now our chains are intentionally sent potentially up to 2 lengths long, and that's to accommodate a bunch of different gear and sprocket ratios. So if you first put the chain on and it's way too loose and you can't adjust all the slack out of it, you may have to take 2 links out of the chain. Alright, and just like that, now you're going to want to connect your link, and then we'll move on to chain adjustment. Okay, so on this next step, I'm going to show you guys how to adjust the chains. So the important thing to remember about the MotoTrax chain adjustment system is if you adjust the outside chain via these clamshells, which is the only way to do it, it also adjusts the inside chain. On the contrary, if you adjust the inside chain based off of the front sliders, it actually only adjusts the inside chain. So every time you go to adjust your chain, you're going to want to loosen these clamshells and slide the hub all the way forward, loosening this side chain as much as possible. Also bring back your sliders in the front all the way, loosening the primary chain as much as possible, and then reset everything. It's a lot simpler if you do it that way. So right now, the clamshells are fully bottomed out, as is the front sliders. So the chains are as loose as possible. To start with, you want your hub bolt slightly loose so that you can spin it, but without a lot of play. That frees up the hub. Then what you're going to want to do is you want to tighten this outside chain first. So you're going to slide your clamshells back until you get the chain tight, and then make sure you also slide the inside clamshell into the exact same orientation. And sometimes it works easiest to count the notches, make sure that they're perfectly lined up with each other. Once the outside chain is tight, which hand tight, you should just be able to push on it and it wiggle just a little bit. Then you want to adjust the primary chain. So now that we have the outside chain adjusted and it's tight right here, using these clamshells, we're going to adjust the inside primary chain using the inside chain adjuster bolt. You also want to make sure that these flange nuts that are work off of the adjusters are all the way loose and as far out as possible, so that when you're sliding this, it doesn't bind in any way. You're going to want to make sure your front 4 chain adjustment bolts are loose, and just barely, so that it'll actually slide. Okay. And then you just spin this bolt out. And you'll see that the chain is tightening as we go. All right, and for this primary chain, you want to be able to put about 1 finger on the tip of the back of this chain guide and its next ring, so once it warms up, it'll actually get a little bit looser. So you want it a little bit tighter to begin with. And then that's pretty much it. So then from here, what you're gonna do is you're gonna take these flange nuts, slide them in completely to the bar, and snug them up right there on both sides. You're gonna tighten down your front 4 M12 bolts. These bolts go to 100 Newton meters each. Fully snug them up, and then you're gonna actually tighten your hub axle itself, and this bolt also goes to 100 Newton meters. And once you've tightened everything up, cinched it down, take a second look at it, but your drivetrain's adjusted, ready to go.